So our next presentation is actually going to be a virtual one. This is Tom Stanton and Mary Duffy from the Danny Did Foundation. If you're not familiar with the Danny Did Foundation, it's actually a foundation founded around Danny. And this Tom is Danny's uncle, and Danny died of SUDEP about, I think it's now 5 or 6 years ago. And they founded Danny Did to create awareness and make sure that kids could have access to technology that does seizure monitoring and management overnight to avoid SUDEP. So they're going to talk a little bit about the technology and the devices that they know about that are the cutting edge, and additionally some information about SUDEP, which was there's some questions about that earlier too. So without, if there's any questions, please put them in the app. They are not going to be available for live Q&A, but they're going to respond to all the questions that do go into the app. So if there are questions about any of the things they're talking about or any of the concepts, please do put those questions in there. So I'll let them take it away.
Hello to everyone. My name is Tom Stanton, and I'm the Executive Director of the Danny Did Foundation. We appreciate the chance to share our story. The team at Danny Did believes that caregivers are the key drivers in changing and improving the standard of care for patients in the future. My colleague Mary Duffy and I will be presenting, and I'm going to start by sharing the story of my nephew, Danny Stanton, who you can see pictured here, and who is the inspiration behind the Danny Did Foundation. Then we will talk about Danny's cause of death, which was sudden unexpected death in epilepsy, or SUDEP. We are also going to highlight some resources that we believe can help to keep people who face epilepsy safer. So on this next slide, I want to start by introducing you to Danny. Danny was an athletic and affectionate child who enjoyed doing everything with his 2 older siblings, Mary Grace and Johnny, along with his younger brother, Tommy. Danny had his first seizure at age 2. His parents witnessed just 4 more seizures over the next 2 years. He was relatively well controlled by medication. Just a few months before his 5th birthday, Danny visited his neurologist on a Tuesday, where he received a slight modification to his medication due to his weight gain, and they were told they were on a good path. 4 days later, on a Saturday morning, Danny was found deceased in his bottom bunk bed on December 12, 2009. The first time his parents learned the term SUDEP was on Danny's death certificate. His parents, Mike and Marianne, started the Danny Did Foundation to fill gaps in education and communication that they experienced during the treatment of Danny. The name of our organization comes from the last line of his obituary, which was written by his dad, and which read, "Please go and enjoy your life. Danny did." Despite our tragic origins, it is the spirit and joy of Danny's life that motivates the Danny Did Foundation in our work to help other families. The next slide. There are many fantastic epilepsy organizations, and our goal is not to overlap with the work that they do. At Danny Did, we have 2 main points of focus. First, to increase public awareness about epilepsy and the risks that accompany it, and in particular, the risk of sudden unexpected death in epilepsy. We advocate for honest and open dialogue between doctors and parents. As all of you know well, caregivers can and do digest difficult information about risks all the time. At the end of the day, it is our job as caretakers of our kids to consume information and then to shape the best possible treatment plan. Our second area of focus at Danny Did is to increase awareness of and access to devices and technologies that alert to seizures. This next slide, we talk about the risks for people with epilepsy. And as everyone knows, there are several risks that accompany a diagnosis of epilepsy. Risks related to falls and injuries, swimming, bathing, driving, and head trauma are all important to be aware of. A sad reality is that there's also a risk of mortality with epilepsy. SUDEP is one of those mortality risks. According to the National Institutes of Health, SUDEP is the most common epilepsy-related cause of death. The exact causes behind a case of SUDEP are still being studied. So it is important to follow good seizure management practices, such as avoiding triggers and looking into all available therapies. A discussion with your doctor to determine where you or your loved one fall on the risk continuum is extremely important. The Danny Did Foundation stresses the importance of caregiver intervention during a seizure to help reduce risks. When a caregiver is alerted to a loved one who is experiencing a seizure, they can come to their aid and provide support, which may include a rescue medication. The use of seizure detection monitors is one tool that can help to keep your loved ones safer. Before Danny died, his parents had never heard the term SUDEP. It was never a risk that had been raised with them by Danny's neurologist. That lack of disclosure, unfortunately, is not uncommon, but it is something that Danny Did is trying to change. Right now, there is no known 100% prevention tactic for SUDEP. No medication, no surgery, no diet, no device. But we do believe there are steps we can promote to patients and families to minimize the risk. One of those steps is to consider the use of resources such as monitoring devices that detect certain seizures and can alert caretakers and enable early intervention. Now I'll turn it over to my colleague Mary to talk more about these types of devices.
Okay, for the next slide, this slide is to acknowledge that there are several ways a non-invasive device system can attempt to detect seizure activity. Many of the systems in place today focus on movement, but there are several technologies in the pipeline that attempt to expand beyond just movement. Researchers are also looking at these indicators listed here to develop reliable devices. And for our next slide, we see devices and technology as a complement to medication, surgery, and diet as part of a patient's treatment plan. In other words, we view devices as another tool in the caretaker's toolkit. A device doesn't replace a parent's instincts or their vigilance, but a monitoring and alerting system can serve as one piece to the puzzle, lending backup that you will be notified if a seizure takes place. Monitoring for seizure activity within a hospital is important. Those monitors are very valuable to the nurses, to the doctors, and as well to the patient. But when a patient leaves the hospital, we believe that monitoring is just as important in a home setting. This list on the slide highlights that we believe alerting devices are so important for caregivers. We feel strongly about the simple concept of early intervention. If you are present, you can take action. You have a chance. Two of these points to highlight, which we hear about all the time from caregivers, are reduced anxiety and increased independence for patients and increased peace of mind for the caregiver. We could never overstate the impact of these factors for families who face seizures. And moving to the next slide, it is important to emphasize that monitoring devices have value not just for patients and caregivers, but for providers as well. The management and treatment of epilepsy are mainly guided by tracking of how often seizures take place. For very valid reasons, patient self-reporting and recall is known to be incomplete. Arming doctors with accurate seizure tracking data regarding the frequency of seizures can lead to more effective evaluation and optimization of seizure medications. That point alone from this list of benefits should serve as a key motivator for providers to understand the value of monitoring devices. All of this being said, we don't pretend that the current available devices are perfect. So Tom will speak now more about that.
Thanks, Mary. On this next slide, to Mary's comment, currently available devices do have shortcomings and they need to evolve. False detections can be a problem in devices that aim to alarm for multiple seizure types. In addition to the points listed on this slide, there can be other barriers with device technology, such as compatibility with other data like health records, prescription info, and lab results, questions around data ownership and portability between platforms, and issues related to patient privacy, and also ambiguous expectations for who is monitoring the data device and when. So on this next slide, we talk about questions to ask when you're considering a device. It's not easy to stay current on all of the device options, especially when the marketplace and the pipeline is always changing. This is an area where we at Danny Did can be a resource. This is a good place for the reminder that Danny Did does not make or sell any products. Our role as an organization is not to recommend or endorse a specific device, but simply to let caregivers and patients know what their options are. Before picking a specific device system, it's important to go through a checklist of practical, common sense considerations. To help with that, Danny Did has created the brochure on this slide, which is available on our website. So looking at the steps, the first being to figure out the best method for detecting your seizure types. So when considering an alert system, an obvious first step is to look at whether the device can detect the seizure types that you want to monitor. Different seizure types can be detected by different methods. We encourage patients and caregivers to talk with their doctors about if and how their seizure type can be detected. Number two is determining the goals, your goals for the device. So defining your motive for monitoring seizures helps to ensure the selected device meets that goal. So a couple of examples. One goal could be to notify someone when a seizure occurs. So if that is the goal, a major consideration is how the device sends alerts. So for example, is it through an audible alarm, a text message, an email, or a phone call to emergency contacts? Another goal might be to track how often seizures take place. So in that case, some considerations for that goal would include, is your child willing to be monitored? How does the device store data, and is that data secure? And how easily is the data shared with medical professionals? So looking at the third consideration, no device will be effective if it is not used correctly. So consider, will it be physically comfortable to wear? Is your child emotionally comfortable to use it? Are there weight restrictions, age restrictions? Where can the device be used? Inside the home, outside the home? Is it water resistant? Is it battery powered? All these kind of common sense considerations that are very important. The fourth factor we encourage is to understand what is required to use the device. So for example, are other technologies like internet access, cameras, or smart devices needed to support the monitoring system? Does the company that makes the system provide tutorials? We always encourage families to test whether the manufacturer provides strong customer support before you commit to using their product. And lastly, and perhaps the most commonly asked consideration, is the cost of the device. So some monitoring devices can have multiple costs, and questions to consider would include what is the base cost to purchase the system? Is there a monthly or annual fee in addition to that? Are there setup or maintenance costs or any other technology to support the system? And then, is the device covered by insurance or a medical expense account? So next, Mary is going to briefly discuss a range of systems that are accessible now. The seizure detection field is booming, and the options have increased substantially in the last 10 years. There's much more in development than we will mention here. This short list that she will cover does not include mobile apps or technologies that are implanted, such as VNS or RNS.
Okay, let's start with the MFit. The MFit is made by a company called Epi USA in Texas, and MFit makes two products that may be of interest to people with epilepsy. The first is called the Movement Monitor, and it's a contactless detection device that monitors for movement activity during sleep. It's a thin product that sits between the mattress and the box spring, monitoring for the onset of repetitive movement. MFit also makes a second product called the MFit QS. It is also placed below the mattress and tracks multiple variables during sleep, including heart rate variability. The QS does not have the capacity to alarm, but you can review the data each morning. In the next slide, we'll just go over the Smart Watch Inspire app by Smart Monitor in California. It is designed to be used on a Samsung or Apple Watch to detect repetitive or shaking movements. When the Inspire detects seizure-like motion, it sends a signal to the app running on the user's paired smartphone to then send a text to the phone, or a text or a phone call alert to whomever the smartwatch Inspire user designates as their emergency contact, such as multiple family members or other care providers. The next product is called the Embrace 2, which is a wristband system. It's made by Empatica, and it is designed to detect and alert for tonic-clonic or convulsive seizures after 20 seconds, and to monitor physical activity and rest. Embrace 2 transmits data to a paired smartphone via Bluetooth connection and has the ability to alert others via text message and phone call when certain seizures types occur. This system is FDA approved to indicate for movement for patients 6 and older, and it does require a prescription if you live in the United States. The next slide is the Sami. The system focuses on nocturnal activity, and the Sami stands for Sleep Activity Monitor. During sleep, audio, video information from a remote infrared video camera is placed near the bed and is sent, the information is sent to an app running on an iOS device, such as an iPhone or an iPad Touch. The Sami app records and analyzes the video for unusual activity. When that unusual activity is detected, an alarm is sounded on the Apple device, which is usually placed in the parent's bedroom, followed by live sound and video from the Sami network camera. If the alarm is triggered, the system records the event as well, and the recording can then be shared with your doctor. Another device is called Mecu, a product that was not specifically designed for epilepsy in mind. However, the system that uses radar technology can track many indicators, such as motion and sound in real time. You can set alerts for some of the features, and a key component is that it does send an alert if breathing ceases for 20 seconds. Mecu is marketed as a baby monitor, but it does not have age or size restrictions, so adults can use it. Added features specific to seizures are currently being studied at the Boston Children's Hospital. And the last one I'll discuss is the pulse oximeters. While these devices are not explicitly designed or manufactured to detect seizures, with their ability to measure heart rate and blood oxygen levels, pulse oximeters do have applicable monitoring and alarming sounding functions that can be useful to someone who experiences seizures. You will need to work with your doctor to obtain a pulse ox. And now I'll turn it back over to Tom for a preview on next generation of epilepsy technologies.
So it's definitely fair to say that non-invasive and wearable devices for epilepsy are still in the early stages, but in general, they are becoming more sophisticated and more reliable. Detection for generalized tonic-clonic seizures to alert caregivers and enable timely intervention is currently pretty strong. Detection for other types of seizures is the next chapter, and as many of you may know, there is a big need for it. You also know that seizure unpredictability is one of the greatest challenges of epilepsy. This slide shares what we see as the future for this field, including the Holy Grail, a non-invasive system that forecasts a seizure and delivers an intervention to suppress it. On the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about our grant program at Danny Did and how that works. We want to make sure that families who are made aware about seizure detection devices also have access to get them into place in their homes. So the way our process works is for someone to download the application on our website, which is dannydid.org, fill that out and return it to us through email. After that is in place, we set up a phone call with each applicant and make sure that questions are answered and that the device appears to be a fit for the needs of the family. If the grant is awarded to the family, We fund the award directly to the caregivers, and then the caregivers place the order for the system themselves, typically through the product website. So again, our goal is to make the systems accessible, and many of these are cost prohibitive for some families who need them. We are here to help through the process, and we try to keep it as streamlined and as manageable as possible. So our website, dannydid.org, is the best place to start if you're looking to find out more about this program. So on our final slide, we just want to end by saying that we appreciate the chance to interact with you. Empowering the community with information is a huge part of our mission. We want to note that this educational content was made possible with support from our partners at VNS Therapy by LivaNova. We hope to keep in touch. We hope that you will reach out to us if you have questions or if there are ways that we can help.